Hi, my name is Diego Fernandez-Salvador, and today I will be presenting regarding a proposed experimental study that I was curious to explore. The general idea of this study was to observe how language can affect memory, but with a twist on some of the previous research in the area. I will begin by expanding on the context and motivation to research said topic. The study that motivated me to explore this topic was originally conducted by Loftus and Palmer in 1974, and it was called Reconstruction of Automobile Destruction, an example of the interaction between language and memory. They wanted to explore how using suggestive language could have distorted a person's recollection of an event in different ways and to a measurable extent. They did indeed prove this effect and how it varies depending on the words used. Their research was divided into two different experiments that complemented each other in order to arrive at the same conclusion. Introducing suggestive information into an individual's recollection of an event can alter their memory. Loftus and Palmer demonstrated this in their first experiment by asking participants to estimate the speed of a certain car during a collision after watching a video of the event. The independent variable is the specific verb used during the phrasing of the question that causes the subjects to change their estimates in reference to the speed they would have estimated had another verb been used. If participants were asked at what speed the car had smashed into the other, the estimates were higher than those asked the same question with the verb hit instead. A variety of other verbs were used as well, with the non-suggestive version of the question serving as the experiment's control. The results led Loftus and Palmer to conclude that people can be led to recall events in a certain manner if given the right pieces of information beforehand, this case being in the form of language. The study I am proposing is an attempt at cross-validating the results from the original Loftus and Palmer results with my own, where the only significant difference is that my participants will be non-native English speakers. This is done with the objective of investigating if the influence of words on memory may vary according to how good you are with the language that they concern. Two theoretical frameworks that I will be referencing in my variation of this experiment is the multi-store model by Atkinson and Shiffrin, as well as schema theory, where I'll be referring to Rumelhart's work on this topic. The multi-store model is an explanation of memory proposed by Atkinson and Shiffrin, which assumes that there are three unitary memory stores, and that information is transferred between these stores in a linear sequence. The three main stores are the sensory memory, short-term memory, and long-term memory. Each of the memory stores differs in the way information is processed, how much information can be stored, and for how long it's stored. Schema theory's central claim is that our knowledge of the world is organized and categorized, which can influence our cognition and behavior. A schema is a cluster of knowledge or memory that is stored in the mind. They're also called cognitive frameworks, as they are a system for categorizing and organizing information in memory. My hypothesis is that the different verbs used in the same question will each affect the participant's approximation of the car's collision speed. The null hypothesis, however, is that the different verbs used in the same question will have no effect on the participant's approximation of the car's collision speed. Thus, either the words have an effect on recall or they don't. As I alluded to earlier, the independent variable is the use of the different verbs smash and hit in the leading question. This is measured according to the question given to the respective experimental conditions. The dependent variable is the estimate of the car's speed in reference to the influence of the verb used in the leading question. This is measured according to the estimate written down by participants after having filled out the questionnaire after watching the video of the collision. I chose the independent measure design for this experiment in order to demonstrate the individual effects of the verbs used in the leading questions on the participant's speed approximation of the car collision. Thus, the experiment was divided into three groups. The control condition, where subjects received the non-leading question, in this case at what speed did the cars make contact, and both experimental conditions, where one used the leading question with the verb hit and the other with the verb smash. My design was purposefully and implicitly includes an additional variable, which is the participant's primary language being Spanish. This variable is controlled by the explicit survey requirement through UCLA SONA, asking for only native Spanish speakers and less than fluent English. The experiment will be carried out during the span of a single day and conducted in the UCLA Psych department as to avoid unnecessary noises or interruptions from class hours that would disrupt the participants' normal thinking processes. All subjects will participate in the experiment individually without making contact with other participants in order to avoid over-rehearsal of the event. The target population of our experiment is UCLA undergraduate students who are all between ages 18 to 23. The sample will consist of 90 participants who will be chosen through the volunteer sampling technique. They will be distributed into each group with the following manner: 30 to the control group, 30 to the experimental group hit, and 30 to the experimental group smash. The way the participants will be allocated to their groups is by designating two different colors to each group. 90 numbered pieces of paper, each with one of 6 colors, will be blindly chosen by the participants from a bag where they had previously been shuffled. The number will symbolize the participant's turn, while the color will determine which group they would be assigned to. As for the exact procedure, I would invite all UCLA undergrad students through SONA to participate voluntarily and to also clarify details of time and place, development of all materials needed for the experiment, then have 90 participants come into one of the psychology department offices individually throughout the day previous to the experiment date. Each participant blindly selects a paper from a bag that indicates the researchers, their group, through color and turn through number. All 90 participants come back the next day to Moore Lecture Hall, and a handout was given to each participant for them to be distracted while they wait to participate. Participants are pulled out of the lecture hall and taken by an assistant researcher to their respective room in the psychology department according to their group color until all three groups are occupied with the participant. The participant is received by one of three researchers and is asked to sit down in the assigned chair. The clip of the car crash is then played as soon as the participant is ready. After 30 seconds of having watched it, the participant is given the group-specific questionnaire and a pen to answer the questions. Once the participant has answered all questions on the questionnaire, they are thanked for their participation and given a debrief letter. The subject is then escorted out of the faculty by an assistant researcher via a route that prevents them from making contact with subjects who may have not yet participated and are given their cell phones back. Another participant is brought in immediately, and the process is repeated until all participants have successfully participated. As we can see in the following figure, the average speed estimate for the SMASH group is higher than the average speed estimate for the HIT group by about 12.7% in numerical difference. The control group's average was 84.23 kilometers per hour, relatively close to the average between the HIT and SMASH group, which is 85.06 kilometers per hour. Although both standard deviations from the control and HIT group are almost exactly the same, the SMASH group has a greater standard deviation that differs by 17.85%. The ANOVA test method of statistical analysis was used hypothetically in order to find out how each group relates to each other in terms of the effect that their independent variables has on their average speed estimates. And this method allows for an understanding of how influential the independent variable is to the dependent variable by performing a t-test for each experimental group and comparing their values. The calculated p-value of the ANOVA test is 0.85, which is equivalent to a level of significance of 0.85%, with a non-significant quasi-F ratio of 0.17, meaning the relationship between both the independent variable and dependent variable in all three of our samples can be determined to be virtually null in reference to the necessary p-value of less than 0.05 for a significant relationship between the variables to be established. Furthermore, the F ratio demonstrates that the results are both reliable and accurate. Thus, given that the ANOVA test demonstrates a p-value of more than 0.05, the null hypothesis is accepted while rejecting the possibility of a relationship between the verb used in the leading question and speed estimate of the participant in the group. The speed estimation of the cars colliding did not depend on the phrasing of the leading question, specifically the verb used in its structure. This proves that the null hypothesis and is inconsistent with Loftus and Palmer's 1974 study. The lack of consistency can be attributed to either the methodological limitation of accounting for driving experience or the non-fluency in English, where our participants had a significant difference in characteristics with those of the original experiment, proving relevant to the findings obtained. Although the sampling selection for participants intended for non-fluent English speakers, it is not sufficient to isolate this as the cause for the hypothetical results, given that driving experience was not accounted for when sampling. Referring to both the MSM and schema theory as background research for the experiment, schema theory provides a valuable interpretation of the results that is consistent with the theory itself and can explain to a certain extent the incongruity of the results with those of Loftus and Palmer. Schema theory states that a distortion and or mistake in cognition can occur when the settings that surround an individual are unfamiliar and thus require a new approach. This can be observed as a case for our participants, whereas aforementioned, the lack of driving experience and language barrier combine to prevent the results from being similar to those with the original experiment. The students have primitive or rudimentary schemas in terms of driving experience and understanding of the English language in comparison to the schemas of fully fledged American college students, who the majority most likely had experience driving as well as have a much better fluency in English compared in the Loftus and Palmer's experiment. Although both hypothetical results are inconsistent, we are able to demonstrate that suggestive information has little to no effect on memory recall when considering an individual's lack of reference information in their cognitive schemas. The next step to research is clear. Isolate the variable of non-native fluency in English as to avoid conflating the causes for lack of results consistent with Loftus and Palmer's original results from their 1974 experiment.